The Velthari warship hung in the darkness of space like a wounded beast. Its engines were dead. Its weapons were silent. Inside, Commander Zoreth pressed his four-fingered hand against the cold metal wall and tried to stop shaking. They had lost. The humans had beaten them in just 3 standard days. 3 days. The Velthari had spent months planning this attack. They had gathered their best ships. They had trained their finest soldiers. They had studied human tactics and found what they believed were weaknesses. They were wrong about everything. Zoreth remembered the battle clearly. The human ships had moved through space like nothing he had ever seen. They were fast. They were brutal. They worked together in ways that seemed impossible. When one human ship was hit, 2 more appeared to cover it. When the Velthari tried to retreat, the humans cut off their escape routes. When the Velthari thought they had won a small victory, it turned out to be a trap. But the worst part was not the ships. The worst part was the soldiers. The humans had boarded Zoreth's command vessel during the final hours of the battle. He had heard stories about human warriors. Everyone in the galaxy had heard the stories. Humans came from a death world called Earth. Their planet tried to kill them every day with storms, earthquakes, predators, diseases, and countless other dangers. Only the strongest survived. Only the most dangerous thrived. The stories said that human soldiers were monsters. They said humans enjoyed violence. They said humans would tear their enemies apart with their bare hands and laugh while doing it. They said that human anger was like fire, unstoppable and consuming. Zoreth had seen his soldiers face the humans in the corridors of his ship. He had watched through security cameras as the humans moved through the darkness with terrifying skill. They used weapons and fists and anything else they could find. They never stopped. They never slowed down. They never seemed to get tired. His best warriors fell in minutes against these Deathworld killers. And now it was over. Zoreth looked around the bridge of his ship. His officers were huddled together in one corner. Some were wounded. All were afraid. The Velthari were a proud species. They had conquered 12 star systems. They had defeated 17 different alien races. They had never lost a war. Until now. The door to the bridge slid open with a hiss. Zoreth turned and saw them. 5 human soldiers walked into the room. They wore dark armor covered in scratches and burns from the recent fighting. Their faces were hidden behind helmets. They carried weapons that looked simple but deadly. Blood, both red and blue, stained their armor. The leader of the humans stepped forward. He was tall, even for a human. His armor had a small symbol on the chest that Zoreth did not recognize. The human reached up and removed his helmet. Zoreth felt his heart beat faster. The human's face was covered in scars. One long mark ran from his forehead to his chin, crossing over one eye that was clearly artificial. His hair was gray and cut very short. His eyes were dark and cold. He looked at the Velthari officers like a predator studying prey. "I am Captain James Morrison," the human said. His voice was deep and rough, like stone grinding against stone. "You are now prisoners of the Terran Alliance." Zoreth straightened his back and tried to look brave. He would not show fear, even if he felt it. "I am Commander Zoreth of the Velthari Dominion. I demand to know what you plan to do with us." The human captain stared at him for a long moment. Then he did something strange. He laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. It was not a mocking laugh. It was the laugh of someone who found something genuinely funny. "What do we plan to do with you?" Morrison repeated. "We plan to give you food, medical care for your wounded, a safe place to stay until we can arrange prisoner exchanges." He paused, his scarred face relaxing slightly. "What did you think we were going to do?" Zoreth blinked his 3 eyes in confusion. This was not what he expected. This was not what anyone expected. "You are from a death world. Your species is known for violence. We attacked your colonies. We killed your people. We destroyed your stations. We expected revenge." Morrison's smile faded. His scarred face became serious. "You expected us to torture you, to execute you, maybe to make examples of you, to send your bodies back to your homeworld as a warning. Yes, Zorath admitted quietly, that is exactly what we expected. The human captain walked closer to Zorath. The other humans stayed still, watching everything with alert eyes. Morrison stopped just a few feet away from the Velthari commander. Up close, Zorath could see that the human was tired. Dark circles under his eyes spoke of many nights without sleep, but there was no cruelty in that face, just weariness. "Let me tell you something about humans," Morrison said quietly. "Yes, we come from a death world. Yes, our planet is dangerous. Yes, we have violence in our history, more violence than you could imagine, but that is not all we are." He held up one gloved hand. "This hand has killed. I won't lie about that. I have fought in 3 wars. I have done things I am not proud of. I have held weapons that ended lives. But this hand has also helped rebuild villages after disasters. It has pulled drowning children from rivers. It has held the hands of dying friends and enemies alike. It has planted trees and built houses and wiped away tears." Zorath did not understand. "You show mercy to those who attacked you. Why? What do you gain from this?" "Because mercy is strength," Morrison said. "Any creature can destroy. Any creature can take revenge. But it takes real strength to stop, to show compassion, to break the cycle of violence before it destroys everything." One of Zorath's officers spoke up. She was young, barely an adult by Velthari standards. Her name was Theora, and she was one of the brightest tactical minds in the fleet. Now she looked frightened and confused. "This is a trick. The Deathworlders are playing games with us. They will hurt us later. They are just waiting for us to let our guard down." Morrison looked at her. His expression softened slightly. "I understand why you think that. Your leaders probably told you terrible things about us. They probably said we eat our enemies, that we enjoy suffering, that we are monsters who cannot be reasoned with." He shook his head. "Some humans have done monstrous things, I will not deny that. Our history is full of cruelty and evil, but most of us are just people. We love our families. We want peace. We dream of a galaxy where species can live together without fear." Zorath found himself wanting to believe the human, but years of propaganda were hard to overcome. Years of training. Years of being told that the humans were the greatest threat the galaxy had ever seen. "Your species almost wiped out 3 of our colonies in this battle. Your weapons killed thousands of our soldiers. How can you speak of peace?" "And your species attacked us first," Morrison said calmly. "Your fleet destroyed 2 of our civilian stations. You killed people who had no weapons, children playing in school, elders in medical facilities, innocent people who had never harmed anyone." Zorath felt shame burning in his chest. He had followed orders. He had not questioned them. He had believed that the humans were too dangerous to be allowed to spread through the galaxy. His leaders had said that striking first was the only way to survive. "We were told you would eventually destroy us," Zorath said quietly. "We were told that humans always conquer everything they touch, that your expansion would never stop until you ruled everything." Morrison sighed. "And we were told the same about you, that the Velthari would never stop expanding, that you saw all other species as inferior, that you would enslave us or kill us if we did not strike first." "So both sides believed lies," Zorath said. "Both sides believed fear," Morrison corrected. "Fear makes people do terrible things. Fear makes people attack before they are attacked. Fear creates the very enemies it warns about. Fear is a weapon that wounds those who wield it." The young Velthari officer Theora stepped forward. Her voice was shaking with emotion. "I saw your soldiers kill my friends. I watched them die in the corridors of this ship. Reth and Nala and Kaivan. They were good people. They had families. How can you talk about peace while their blood is still wet on your armor?" Morrison turned to face her. He did not flinch from her anger. He did not look away from the pain in her eyes. "I am sorry for your loss, truly. I have lost friends too. The pain never goes away completely. It becomes part of you. but killing more people will not bring your friends back. Revenge will not heal your wounds. It will only create new wounds for others. It will only add more names to the list of the dead. He reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a small device. This is a medical scanner. Your friend over there is wounded. His arm looks broken, maybe worse. May I help him? The wounded Velthari officer was named Keth. He looked terrified. He pressed himself against the wall like he expected Morrison to hurt him. His arm hung at a strange angle, and his face was twisted with pain. "He is scared of you," Zorath said. "I know," Morrison replied. "Will you tell him that I mean no harm?" Zorath hesitated. Everything he had been taught said that humans were dangerous. Everything he had learned in military training said to never trust an enemy. But something in Morrison's voice made him pause. There was no deception there. No hidden cruelty. Just a tired soldier offering help. "Lieutenant Keth," Zorath said to the wounded officer, "let the human examine your arm." Keth looked at his commander with wide eyes full of fear. "Sir, are you certain?" "That is an order." The human captain moved slowly toward Keth. His movements were careful, like someone approaching a frightened animal. He held up the medical scanner and let Keth see it clearly. "This will not hurt," Morrison said gently. "It just scans for injuries, see." He ran the device over his own arm first. A soft blue light glowed and then faded. Nothing dangerous, nothing painful. Keth nodded slowly. Morrison moved closer and scanned the Velthari's injured arm. The device beeped several times, displaying information on a small screen. "2 breaks in the bone," Morrison said. "You also have some internal bleeding. You need proper medical treatment soon. We have doctors on our ship who can help. Will you come with us?" Keth looked at Zorath again. The commander nodded. "All of you will come to our ship," Morrison announced to the room. "You will be treated well. You will have food and shelter and medical care. When this war is over, we will send you home to your families." "And if the war never ends?" Zorath asked. Morrison smiled sadly. "All wars end eventually. The question is how many people have to die first. I hope the answer is not many more." The transfer to the human ship was strange. Zorath expected rough treatment. He expected chains and dark cells. He expected the humans to drop their pretense of kindness once they were away from witnesses. None of that happened. The human ship was called the Relentless. It was a warship clearly built for battle. Its corridors were metal and plain. But the soldiers who escorted the Velthari prisoners were polite. They spoke softly. They helped the wounded walk. They answered questions with patience and even kindness. Zorath found himself in a large room with the other captured officers. There were beds along the walls. Real beds with soft coverings, not cold floor or hard benches. There was a table with food and water. The food was strange, different from anything on the Velthari homeworld, but it smelled good. It smelled like it was made with care. "This cannot be real," muttered one of his officers. "They are fattening us up for something. This is all a trick." Zorath did not respond. He was watching the door. He was waiting for the true humans to appear, the monsters from the stories, the killers that his people had been warned about for generations. But hours passed and no monsters came. A human doctor arrived to treat the wounded. She was small, with gentle hands and a soft voice. Her name was Dr. Chen. She worked carefully on each injury. She explained everything she was doing. She asked if her patients were comfortable. She apologized when she caused pain. "Why are you helping us?" Keth asked her. "We are your enemies. Our weapons killed your people just hours ago." The doctor looked at him with kind eyes. "You are not my enemy. You are my patient. Right now, you are a person who is hurt and scared and far from home. That is all that matters to me." Keth had no response to that. He simply stared at her with his 3 eyes wide in amazement. Later that night, Captain Morrison came to visit the prisoners. He brought a bottle of some human drink and several cups. He walked in without guards, alone and unarmed. "It is called coffee," he explained. "It helps us stay awake. It is bitter, but many humans find it pleasant. I thought you might want to try it." Zorath accepted a cup. The liquid was dark and bitter, but strangely pleasant after the first few sips. "Captain Morrison, I must ask you something." "Ask, I will answer if I can." "The Velthari have fought many species. When we captured enemies, we treated them poorly. We believed that harsh treatment would break their spirits and prevent future resistance." Zorath paused, searching for the right words. "Does your kindness have the same purpose? Are you trying to break us with confusion instead of pain?" Morrison laughed again, that same honest laugh. "No, our kindness is genuine. We treat prisoners well because it is the right thing to do. There is no hidden strategy." "But we killed your people. We attacked your homes. We started this war." "You followed orders," Morrison said. "Just like my soldiers follow mine. The people who made this war happen are not in this room. They are sitting in comfortable offices, making decisions that others have to live and die for. Why should I punish you for their choices?" Zorath felt a strange emotion building in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Respect. He was starting to respect this human. This enemy who should have been his torturer was instead sharing a drink with him like an old friend. "Tell me about your world," Zorath said. "Tell me about Earth." Morrison's eyes grew distant, looking at something far away. "Earth is beautiful and terrible. It is a world of extremes. We have mountains so tall that snow never melts on their peaks. We have deserts so hot that nothing can survive there during the day. We have oceans so deep that we still have not explored them all. We have forests and plains and frozen wastelands." He took a sip of coffee. "Our world tried to kill us every day, so we learned to adapt. We learned to survive. We learned to fight back against anything that threatened us. But we also learned something else, something just as important. We learned to help each other, because on a death world, no one survives alone." The young Velthari officer Thera was listening closely. "You help each other, even strangers." "Especially strangers," Morrison said. "When a disaster strikes on Earth, people from all over the planet send help. When someone is drowning, others jump in to save them, even at risk to their own lives. When buildings collapse, volunteers dig through the rubble with their bare hands to find survivors. We call it humanity." "You named your compassion after yourselves?" Thera asked, almost smiling. Morrison smiled back. "I suppose we did. We believe that being humane, showing kindness and mercy, is the best part of who we are. It is what separates us from mere animals. Any creature can kill. Not every creature can choose not to." Thera fell silent, thinking about this. Zorath asked another question. "What will happen to us after the war?" "You will go home," Morrison said simply. "You will return to your families and your lives. We do not want to keep you as slaves or trophies. We just want the fighting to stop. And if our leaders refuse to make peace, if they send more ships to attack you." Morrison's expression hardened briefly. "Then we will defend ourselves. We will fight with everything we have, but we will not become monsters to defeat monsters. We will always offer mercy first. Always." Zorath believed him. Days passed on the Relentless. The Velthari prisoners were treated well. They received good food, different each day. They were allowed to exercise and move freely within certain areas of the ship. They could talk to each other and even play games that the humans provided. They were given books and videos about human culture. Some of the prisoners remained suspicious. They whispered that the humans were planning something cruel. They said that the kindness was fake. They said to be ready for the trap to spring shut. But Zorath noticed changes in his people. Keth, who had been terrified of the humans, now smiled when the human doctor came to check on his healing arm. He even laughed at her jokes. Thera, who had been angry and defiant, spent hours talking with human soldiers about their cultures and beliefs. She learned about human music and art. Even the most stubborn prisoners began to relax. They began to see their captors as people, not monsters. One morning, Zoreth was invited to eat breakfast with Captain Morrison. They sat in the captain's private dining room. The food was simple but filling. There were eggs, which Zoreth found strange but tasty, and some kind of bread, and fruit from a dozen different Earth nations. "I have news," Morrison said. "Your government has agreed to negotiate peace. They have also agreed to a prisoner exchange." Zoreth felt his heart leap. "We can go home." "Soon the negotiations will take time. There are many details to work out, but yes, you will go home." Zoreth should have been happy. He was happy, but he also felt something else, something like sadness. "I will miss this ship," he admitted. "That sounds strange, I know. I never thought I would say such a thing about an enemy vessel." "It is not strange," Morrison said. "You have made connections here. You have learned things that challenge everything you believed. Going back to your old life will be difficult. The world will look different now." "My people believe humans are monsters," Zoreth said. "How do I tell them the truth? How do I explain that the enemy treated me better than I expected to be treated by my own allies?" Morrison nodded slowly. "That is perhaps the hardest part of peace, not the treaties, not the trade agreements, not the borders and the reparations. The hardest part is changing minds, replacing fear with understanding. It is slow work. It takes generations sometimes." "You have changed my mind," Zoreth said. "And you have changed mine," Morrison replied. "I expected Velthari prisoners to be arrogant and cruel. I expected them to spit at us and curse us. Instead, I found people who were scared and confused. People who had been lied to just like we were. People who wanted to go home just like my soldiers do." They sat in silence for a moment, two former enemies sharing a meal. "What will you do after the war?" Zoreth asked. Morrison shrugged. "I will probably keep serving for a while. There are always new threats, new conflicts, but I hope that one day I can retire. Maybe buy a small farm somewhere quiet, grow things instead of destroying them, watch the sun rise without wondering if it will be my last." "A warrior who dreams of farming," Zoreth said with a slight smile. "Even warriors get tired of war," Morrison replied, "especially the good ones." The peace negotiations took 3 weeks. During that time, Zoreth and the other prisoners learned more about humans than any Velthari had ever known. They learned about human art and music. They saw paintings that made them feel emotions they had no words for. They heard songs that moved them to tears. They learned about human science and philosophy. They debated ideas late into the night. But most importantly, they learned that humans were not monsters. They were people, complex, flawed, beautiful people. They could be cruel, yes. They could be violent, but they could also be kind. They could be generous. They could show mercy even to those who hurt them. They could choose to be better than their worst impulses. On the day of the prisoner exchange, the entire crew of the Relentless gathered to say goodbye. Zoreth stood with his officers, looking at the humans who had been their captors and had become something like friends. Captain Morrison approached him. "Commander Zoreth, it has been an honor." Zoreth reached out his hand in the human gesture of friendship. He had learned this from watching them. Morrison took it and shook it firmly. "The honor is mine," Zoreth said. "You have shown me that peace is possible. You have shown me that enemies can become friends. I will not forget this. I will not let my people forget this." Morrison smiled. "Go home. Tell your people what you have seen. Help them understand that we do not have to be enemies. Help them see that there is another way." Zoreth nodded. "I will, I promise." Theora approached a human soldier she had befriended. The young woman's name was Sarah. They had spent many hours talking about their lives and their hopes for the future. They had discovered that they had much in common, despite coming from different worlds. "I hope we meet again," Theora said, "under better circumstances." Sarah laughed. "Maybe one day you can visit Earth. I will show you the ocean. It is beautiful. The waves come in and go out forever. You can sit on the beach and feel like you are part of something much bigger than yourself. I would like that, Theora said. I would like that very much. The Velthari boarded a transport ship that would take them to a neutral station. From there, they would be returned to their own people. Zorath watched through a window as the Relentless grew smaller and smaller. He thought about everything he had experienced. He thought about the stories he would tell when he got home. He thought about the long road to peace that still lay ahead. The transport ship entered hyperspace, and the human warship disappeared from view. Zorath closed his eyes and made a silent promise. He would honor what the humans had taught him. He would be an ambassador for peace. He would show his people that mercy was strength and that enemies could become friends. The war was over. But the real work was just beginning. 6 months later, Zorath stood before the Velthari High Council. The great chamber was filled with the most powerful leaders of his species. They watched him with suspicious eyes. Some looked angry, some looked curious, all looked uncertain. "You claim that the humans treated you well," the High Chancellor said. Her voice was cold. "Many would call that collaboration, betrayal of your species. Some even whisper the word traitor." Zorath stood tall. He would not be intimidated. He had faced human soldiers in battle. He could face politicians. "I report only what I experienced, Chancellor. The humans showed us mercy when they could have shown us cruelty. They fed us when they could have starved us. They healed us when they could have let us suffer. They talked to us when they could have isolated us in silence." "Propaganda," one council member muttered. "They were manipulating you, weakening your mind." "To what end?" Zorath asked. "They let us go. They returned us to our homes without conditions. If they wanted to manipulate us, why did they not keep us as bargaining chips? Why did they not demand something in return for our freedom?" The chamber fell silent. Zorath continued. "I was taught that humans were monsters. I was taught that they were mindless killers from a death world, but I learned the truth. Humans are not monsters. They are simply different from us, and different does not mean enemy." The High Chancellor leaned forward. "What would you have us do, Commander? Embrace the species that killed thousands of our soldiers. Forgive them for their attacks on our colonies. Pretend the war never happened." "No," Zorath said. "I would have you understand them. I would have you talk to them. I would have you build bridges instead of weapons. I would have you choose peace because peace is stronger than war." He paused, gathering his courage. "The humans have a saying, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. If we continue to seek revenge, we will destroy each other. Both species will suffer. Both species may die. Is that what we want? Is that what our ancestors fought for? And if we show mercy, they will see us as weak," the council member argued. "They will think they can attack us again without consequences." "No," Zorath said firmly. "They will see us as worthy of respect. The humans understand strength. They come from a world that tests them every day. But they also understand that true strength is not about how many enemies you can kill. It is about how many friends you can make. It is about building rather than destroying." The debate continued for hours. Many council members were angry, many were suspicious, but some were curious, some were tired of war, some were willing to listen to a new idea. In the end, the High Council agreed to open diplomatic channels with the Terran Alliance. It was not peace, not yet, but it was a beginning, a small step on a long road. Zorath left the chamber feeling hopeful for the first time in years. 1 year after the war, a Velthari diplomatic ship docked at a human space station. Zorath was among the passengers. He had been appointed as a cultural ambassador, tasked with building understanding between the two species. It was a job he had never expected and had come to love. Captain Morrison was waiting on the station. He had been promoted to admiral, but he had specifically requested to be present for this moment. He still had the same scars, the same tired eyes, but he was smiling. "Commander Zorath," Morrison said with a warm smile, "Welcome to Station Harmony." "Admiral Morrison," Zorath replied. "It is good to see you again, old friend." They walked together through the corridors of the station. It was a neutral place built specifically for diplomacy between species. Humans and Velthari worked side by side at various tasks. Other species were there too, watching with great interest. Some looked hopeful, some looked skeptical, all looked curious. "You did it," Morrison said. "You convinced your people to give peace a chance." "It was not easy," Zorath admitted. "Many still do not trust humans, many still fear you, but more and more are willing to listen, more and more are willing to try." "And many humans still fear Velthari," Morrison replied. "Change takes time, but we have made a start. That is what matters." They reached an observation deck that looked out into space. The stars glittered like countless diamonds against the black velvet of the void. "I have thought a lot about our conversations on the Relentless," Zorath said. "You talked about mercy being strength, about breaking the cycle of violence. I did not fully understand at the time. I thought it was just words." "And now?" Zorath was quiet for a moment, collecting his thoughts. "Now I think I understand. Violence is easy. Revenge is easy. Any creature with claws or weapons can destroy, but building something, creating something, healing something, that is hard. That requires strength of a different kind, a deeper kind." Morrison nodded. "On Earth we have a long history of violence, wars that killed millions, conflicts that lasted generations, hatred that passed from parent to child for centuries, but we also have a history of reconciliation. Enemies who became allies, nations that forgave each other for terrible wrongs, people who chose to break the cycle." "How?" Zorath asked. "How do you forgive those who hurt you? How do you let go of the pain?" "You do not forget," Morrison said. "You remember the pain so you do not repeat the mistakes, but you choose not to let the pain control you. You choose to look forward instead of backward. You choose hope over hatred. It is a choice you make every day, sometimes every hour." Zorath thought about this. The Velthari are not good at forgiveness. We remember grudges for generations. We teach our children to honor the dead by hating those who killed them. "Humans do that too sometimes," Morrison admitted. "But we have also learned that hatred is a poison. It hurts the hater more than the hated. It keeps wounds open that should be allowed to heal. It chains you to the past when you should be walking toward the future." They stood in silence, watching the stars spin slowly past the window. "I want to tell you something," Zorath said finally. "When I was first captured, I expected to die badly. I expected pain and humiliation and a slow end. Instead, I was treated with kindness. That kindness changed me. It made me question everything I believed." He turned to face Morrison. "You showed me mercy when you had every right to seek revenge. Your people killed my friends in battle and my people killed yours. But you chose not to continue the cycle. You chose to be better than your pain. You chose to be better than your anger." Morrison's eyes glistened slightly. "Thank you for understanding. Thank you for taking that understanding home with you." "No," Zorath said. "Thank you. Thank you for showing me that there is another way. Thank you for being the human that your species can be instead of the monster that my species feared." The diplomatic mission was a success. Over the following years, humans and Velthari slowly built trust. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges were organized. Students from both species visited each other's worlds to learn and to share. It was not always easy. There were setbacks. There were moments when old hatreds flared up. There were those on both sides who wanted to return to war. There were protests and arguments and difficult negotiations. But the foundation of peace held. It held because people like Zorath and Morrison kept building it, brick by brick, conversation by conversation. Zorath returned to the Velthari homeworld as a hero to some and a traitor to others. He spent the rest of his career working for understanding between species. He told his story hundreds of times. He answered the same questions again and again. Were the humans really merciful? Yes, they were. Did they truly let you go without conditions? Yes, they did. Why would they do that? Because mercy is strength. Because they understood that enemies can become friends. Because they believed that the future did not have to repeat the mistakes of the past. Because they chose to be better than their pain. Thera became a diplomat too. She traveled to Earth and saw the ocean that her human friend Sarah had described. She stood on a beach called Big Sur and felt alien waves wash over her feet. She laughed like a child. The water was cold and the waves were powerful and the sun was bright, and she felt more alive than she had ever felt before. Later, she gave a speech to a gathering of both species. The hall was packed with humans and Velthari sitting together. I was taught to fear humans, she said. I was taught that they were dangerous killers from a world of death, but I learned the truth. They are dangerous, yes. They are deadly when they need to be, but they are also capable of something that my people are only beginning to understand. They are capable of choosing not to fight, of choosing peace over victory, of choosing mercy over revenge. She paused, looking at the crowd of humans and Velthari sitting together. Some were crying, some were smiling, all were listening. The humans call themselves Deathworlders, but I think they should call themselves Lifeworlders, because they have shown us how to live together instead of die apart. The audience applauded, humans and Velthari alike. The sound filled the hall like thunder. 20 years after the war, a memorial was built on a neutral planet. It honored all those who had died in the conflict from both species. The names were carved in stone, human and Velthari side by side. Thousands of names, each one a life, each one a story. Admiral Morrison, now retired, attended the dedication ceremony. He was old, his hair white and his face more wrinkled than before. He walked with a cane, but his eyes were still sharp. His mind was still clear. Ambassador Zoreth stood beside him. He too had aged. His scales had faded to a lighter color and he moved more slowly than before. But he stood tall and proud. "We did it," Morrison said quietly. "We really did it." Zoreth looked at the memorial. "We did, not perfectly, not completely, but we made a start that others continued. We planted seeds that others watered. We lit a fire that others fed." "I often wonder what would have happened if we had chosen revenge instead of mercy," Morrison said. "If we had tortured our prisoners, if we had executed captured officers, if we had become the monsters you expected us to be." "The war would have continued," Zoreth said. "Both species would have suffered more. Perhaps we would have destroyed each other entirely. Perhaps other species would have had to build this memorial without us." Morrison nodded. "A single choice can change everything. Mercy or revenge, hope or hatred, peace or war. We chose mercy, we chose hope, we chose peace." "You made the right choice," Zoreth said. "We made it together," Morrison replied. "You could have rejected our mercy. You could have seen it as weakness and used it against us. Instead, you opened your mind. You became an ambassador for understanding. You changed your own people." They stood in silence as a gentle breeze swept across the memorial grounds. Flowers that had been planted by volunteers swayed in the wind. Children of both species played nearby, chasing each other and laughing. "Do you know what I learned from all this?" Zoreth asked. "What?" "I learned that the scariest thing about humans is not your strength. It is not your weapons or your tactics or your Deathworld resilience. The scariest thing is your capacity for choice. You can be anything you decide to be. Monsters or heroes, destroyers or builders, killers or healers. You choose who you are moment by moment, decision by decision." Morrison smiled, "And we chose to be kind." "Yes," Zoreth said. "You chose to be kind, even when you had every reason not to, even when it would have been easier to hate. You showed mercy to those who expected brutal vengeance, and in doing so, you changed the galaxy forever." The ceremony began. Leaders from both species spoke about peace and cooperation. They talked about the lessons of the past and the hopes for the future. They honored the dead and celebrated the living. They made promises that they intended to keep. At the end, Morrison and Zoreth placed the first flowers on the memorial together. One human hand, wrinkled with age. One Velthari hand, scales faded but still strong, working together. The crowd watched in silence. It was a small moment, a simple gesture, but it meant everything. The Deathworld warriors had shown mercy, and that mercy had grown into something beautiful, something that neither species had dared to imagine was possible. Peace. True, lasting peace. Not because fear forced them to stop fighting, not because one side had destroyed the other, but because two former enemies had chosen to be better than their pain. They had chosen hope over hatred, friendship over fear, life over death. And the galaxy was better for it. As the ceremony ended and the crowds began to disperse, Morrison turned to Zoreth one last time. "Thank you, old friend," he said. "For what?" "For giving us a chance, for believing that we could be more than monsters, for taking a risk on peace." Zoreth reached out and clasped Morrison's hand one final time. "Thank you for proving that you were worth believing in." They stood together at the memorial, two old warriors who had found peace. Behind them, humans and Velthari walked side by side, talking and laughing, planning futures together. Children asked their parents about the names on the memorial, and the parents told them stories of sacrifice and hope. The war was a distant memory now. The pain had faded, though it would never disappear entirely. The scars remained on bodies and on hearts. But the mercy that ended the war would never be forgotten. It was carved in stone and written in history, and passed down in stories told from generation to generation. The Deathworld warriors showed mercy. And the galaxy was never the same.